Check, check, check. Yeah, it's better now. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today at our fourth episode of SIP Chronicles. Today we have myself and Max and Giovanni as usually, but also we brought you Mark Crane, who is a creator and author of FusionPBX project, and Denis Alexeitsev, who is our good friend and somebody with a lot of experience in the industry, and he's been asking a lot of good questions during some of our earlier presentations. So, anyway, how have you guys been doing?
Doing good.
All right. You want me to start, or you're asking everybody how y'all doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can do a little bit of introduction, and we have with us Denis Alexeitsev. I'm not so good into pronouncing Denis Alexeitsev, and Mark Crane. And we will have this episode of SIP Chronicle that will be about first thing we'll be covering the FusionPBX project that is the most famous and deployed and I mean the best in its class of interfaces for free switch and of a system for enterprise PBXs and small medium call centers. And then we will talk also about all things that are related to next generation of SIP protocol and all kind of difficult things that we all are trying to give an answer. So, for example, from one side, UDP is not so well versed into bringing around very big packets, and now we have very big packets of fragmentation and whatever. From the other side, we have all cloud infrastructure that is geared toward HTTP, so a connection-oriented protocol with a small transaction. And we will touch all these parts about how SIP will hopefully evolve for this new world. And so, first of all, we have Mark Crane, that is the founder, the main developer, and the boss of the company that develop and support Fusion, because Fusion is not only the best open source project, but is also a project that is backed by commercial support, and so a company can put confidence in it. There is someone that answers your phone call when you need support. So please, Mark, you can start talking about your project, and maybe we will stop and ask and kind of interruptions.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. So my name is Mark Crane. I'm the creator of FusionPBX, as Giovanni introduced me. I started FusionPBX actually. All right, little history. I'll do a little history about myself. I was interested in the internet from the moment I saw it. just got crazy about it. Actually, pretty much the same story on computers. Boy, first time I touched a computer, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, toy, a toy. And I
Hear you. I think we're all in the same boat here.
even as a young kid, the very first time I touched one, I was excited, and I was looking through the book and playing with really rudimentary code immediately because I was excited about what can you do with this thing. So anyway, I was introduced into telephony. My first attempt at it was over dial-up with Microsoft Net Meeting over a 28.8 or a 33.6 modem, maybe 56K, I can't remember. But I did a video call, I think, to somebody in Minnesota, and it was choppy, a little teeny little picture. And but still, I was like, woo, this is cool. So that was on Windows 95. Fast forward a few years, I got, I was working at an internet provider because I told you I was excited about internet. So I started working for one provider. And with that provider, they wanted to do a phone, they needed a phone system, and the manager said our contractor fell through. Who wants to set up this phone system? And I was like, me. That was Cisco call manager, and I made sure my hand went up fast, is because I don't want anybody to beat me. I'm like, no, that sounds fun. So I got really excited about that. By the couple days, I had it working in the office, and by the end of the week, I had it working with a PRI card for Cisco Call Manager on Windows NT4, actually. So it goes back.
Those things were working for real, not like today.
Yeah. And the PRI card back then, if I remember right, was a $5,000 card. Yeah, it was not cheap at the time.
Those dialogic long like that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what got me into it. Then I started hearing about asterisk, and I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. But the funny part was, I was like, I'm going to wait till there's a GUI. So I waited a bit, and one of my friends said, hey, Mark, you want to try out FreePBX? And I'm like, sure, it sounds like fun. And I kept going. I started working on that, and I couldn't stop. It was so much fun. So anyway, I played with it. I started making some voice applications. I integrated a voice application you dialed into, and it would get some information for a loan officer company, so they could say what documents are needed, or whether your loan is ready to go, or what was left, and automated that. And that really got me hooked. So anyway, I then did that for about a year, and after a while I started thinking, well, I wonder if there's an alternative, and I started hunting, and I found FreeSwitch in early alpha, and I'm like, ooh, this looks fun. Said multi-platform, numerous things that were exciting about it, so I thought I'm going to give that a try. So at first I wanted to install it on BSD, so I spent about a year trying to get it to compile one time, off and on as time permitted. But anyway, over time I did it, and then, in the really early days of FreeSwitch, there was a dial plan that you could call, and you'd hear the Star Wars Imperial March song.
And was very, very fun.
I'm resisting the sound effects, but but I was like, woo! Super excited about it, because if you're a real geek, or you really like learning, this stuff just gets so exciting, and every little accomplishment, you're just like, ooh, that's so awesome. And that's why I kept working on not Fusion at the time. I was just learning FreeSwitch. And the first thing I built was a DISA application with JavaScript. DISA.js was probably one of the first things I built with interoperating with FreeSwitch. And that got me more excited. At the time, I was also playing with pfSense, and I thought, well, I don't have all this framework around I mean, but it would be really fun. I started thinking for a couple of years, it'd be really fun to make a GUI, mainly because I'm a builder, I'm a maker, and it's fun. So, I mean, it just, yeah, I just wanted to do it. So a couple of years into learning FreeSwitch, I couldn't resist it. So I started, and I started making it as a package on PSN's firewall. And I started there because they had this infrastructure. They had a nice interface. They had a built-in firewall. It was a firewall. And I made it the FreeSwitch package on PSNs. And that was fun. I really enjoyed it. Over time, I made about, at that particular time, PSNs had about 40 packages total. I had made 10 of them. I mean packages, add-ons to PSNs. And one of them was FreeSwitch, but I made at least nine others. And they were built to help with the phone system part of it. But anyway, what happened after that was I ran it on there for a year, I don't know how long, year, two, I don't know. And PSN's database was XML. And at first I thought, this is cool, but it's nice. You could download one XML and you have your backup of everything. But in a short period of time, I had doubled or tripled the size of that XML file and actually hurt the performance of PSN's reading that XML file because I made it so big. At which point I started thinking, I better make this multi-platform and put a database behind it. So I actually started making it with SQLite and MySQL. Over time, I started using Postgres. And the more I used Postgres, the more I got excited about it. Got so many features, so many deep queries that, anyway, really advanced queries, exciting stuff that you could do with it. So I really got excited about that.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time, but eventually I came up with the name FusionPBX. Where did I come up with that? Well, I've always been kind of science excited, computers and science. And so I thought fusion, like the sun. I'm like, ooh, yeah, maybe that's something good. So I came up with FusionPBX. This is the best I could come up with, at least at the time. So anyway, I really did this. I started Fusion to scratch that development itch, the concept of making or a maker. I just wanted to. It sounded like fun. I had no idea what kind of work that really meant. So because it's practically taken over my life ever since. So it turned out being lots of work, but quite a bit of fun. I met Giovanni along the way and many other people. Got really exciting to talk to people all over the world. Really, that's fun. Meeting people from different cultures, different nationalities, to me, is part of the spice of life, excitement to life. Anyway, and people.
All of us, I think. Yes, we hear you, Mark.
And people are interesting. There's their backgrounds or the skills that they have and their talents in different areas. It just makes it pretty amazing. So it makes this more fun.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't know, Giovanni, why we had just something you said, Mark. Just a few days ago, or maybe a week ago, I asked Giovanni if FreeSwitch is going to run on FreeBSD, and he said, "Oh, it's probably won't."
Ha! Giovanni's teasing me.
Dude. Because the first thing that I thought was, okay, they want the Debian 9 stop. That's what they tell. But I told him Mark came from FreeBSD and is a big fan of FreeBSD. So he will probably can tell you much more.
Oh, I'm excited about BSD.
All
so
right. Well, we use it 100% for our products. So
All right.
Works pretty well. And yeah, we use Postgres since the beginning for pretty much everything as well. So a lot of connections there.
For the free switch port, one of the hangups we've had was simply that the free switch port did not include the Postgres driver, and someone just took over the being a maintainer for the free switch package on FreeBSD, and you can find out who that is using freshports.org and looking at and do a search for free switch, and you'll find his email address.
Oh yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, I know. I'm also developer for FreeBSD for 20 years already.
All right.
So I know how to find things.
Yes.
About,
Well, then I'm even more excited to talk to you.
Yeah. At one point, I think I maintained about 300 ports when I was young, and I had a lot of time on my hand. But it was back in 2002 time, kind of.
Wow, that's
a long time ago.
300. That would be significant work.
Yeah. But I wanted to learn, and as you said, I got excited about FreeBSD and all that, so I ran it on my home PC, and
Well, let's see. This laptop, I was loaded KDE on it, but this is running FreeBSD.
That's cool.
So yes, I am a big fan of BSD. In fact, this was more testing out to move my desktop back to BSD. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about it.
All right. Well, we'll talk for a while about this at some point. But go ahead, Mark.
So with that on the free switch package, I've been communicating with the maintainer. Showed him a little changes to be able to enable Postgres on the latest free switch because it uses mod PGSQL for free switch, and so this will now be compatible with FusionPBX. So I'm pretty excited about that, actually. So anyway, alrighty. So yeah, I like BSD.
May I have a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Generally, yeah. Regarding the customer base, are there enough customers that understand and know how to work with BSD nowadays? I mean, I can understand all the excitement from the developer part of and the fun of it, but from the commercial side and the actual support and yeah.
Well, when I made it, I had it obviously working on BSD in the first place, but people kind of dragged me a bit more to the Linux world. So really, most of our deployments are Debian 9, Debian 10. We have some Ubuntu, some CentOS, but my heart is actually more towards BSD.
Yeah, Denis, you should also look at it at the perspective of if somebody builds complete solution, like something like that includes the hardware and operating system. BSD is actually not a bad choice because it's very good code, and the license is obviously permissive, so you can build whatever you want, and there's community. You have all the technology like ZFS and all that stuff.
Oh no, I was not trying to criticize the choice. I was just trying to understand whether there is enough customer understanding of the operation system. And as you said, that if you're selling it as a complete package, as a device or as an appliance, then it doesn't matter actually at the end what operation system it is. But just because I actually haven't seen in a while anything apart from Linux, so that was pretty interesting to know that there is a base for FreeBSD or a place for FreeBSD in the market as well.
With
Maybe this will also give you give you as a provider of solution some value added because it is not so popular. Your customer is not supposed to tamper with it.
Well, but I mean, if you look at like recent big users like Sony PlayStation 4, it's FreeBSD based. That's like I don't know how
Macintosh,
many.
Apple.
Yeah. Apple as well. And,
Yes, but
all
those all, as you just exactly. But as you said, those are appliances or devices. So, but if you require your customer, or if the customer is more a professional type of customer that needs to deploy something, normally, because what I've seen so far, experienced through my career, is that you provide application as packages, you need to deploy them, and okay, nowadays everything's moving into the cloud, but still there are lots of customers, they want to have something on premise, so they have to provide them with installation instruction and so on, and they have personnel that knows Linux most of the time. And this is why I was curious, just to get your feeling, is what's the acceptance of the customers if you provide them service on a FreeBSD platform instead of Linux.
To me, they're really not very hard to switch back and forth. I don't think so, because majority of the commands are actually possible on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I know FreeBSD as well, but still, you have to differentiate between hardcore developers that you are and the customers. So there is a slight difference.
Well, I'll give you an example. Because BSD has the permissive license, that opened the door for ZFS to be added to really to a core of BSD. Well, I don't know if you'd call it core, but it is very integrated. And with ZFS, one of the coolest things you can do with that file system is snapshots. So one of the things that people often like about virtualization is snapshots. So if you can snapshot, but actually do a snapshot of real hardware, but so you get a lot of that benefit that you can get from a virtualization, but with real hardware. And why does that matter very much? In my opinion, it matters because in the communication software, we're talking real time. We're sending packets every 20 milliseconds. We need no delays. We need is the least amount of middlemen for the quality to be as good as possible. So imagine ability to take a snapshot at any time of a bare bones server. Anyway, Linux has been integrating more ZFS, but not as rapidly or deeply because the license is in GPL. So anyway, that BSD, by being a bit more permissive, it didn't conflict with the license, so they could combine it in the kernel, or make it work very tightly, very integrated. Anyway, I'm just saying that there are some neat things about it. So I think it's worth a look, and it doesn't take very much time to switch back and forth.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly, but it's always useful to understand what edge does a particular solution provides you in comparison to another one. And so it's not only about the excitement about technology, as we are obviously all excited about technology here at the telco, but generally, if you're providing a solution to a customer, it's always good to understand and to know and to be able to present the advantage of a particular decision or a particular solution that you're working with, especially if it's not as common in the market.
But I believe Denis got a point when about acceptance. For example, in a lot of, or at least in my experience, a lot of enterprise or carrier they are supposed, you are supposed to do knowledge transfer, and then you will stay as a long-term support for let's say tier 3 or tier 4, or modification of core things, but they are supposed to learn it all and manage internally. And most often, always in my experience, a shop has one specific flavor of Unix. It can be or Debian or CentOS, but for example, in a CentOS shop or in a Red Hat shop, you can't put Debian without
Well,
some
no,
defeat.
no, Giovanni, I would not. Well, you have a point on this, but I don't think it also. I don't think it's complete view, because it also depends on how the particular solution is packaged. Like if, for example, if you buy Wi-Fi router, it probably runs some kind of Linux these days, and you don't really care about what Linux it is. Or if you buy Cisco router, you don't care what kind of weird operating system it runs, or Juniper or something like that.
Yeah, but that
So, so
appliances.
yeah, well, but it depends on how you package the software. We, for example, provide the whole solution from like installation to maintenance, so customer don't really need to look inside the
Yeah.
box that often. Anyway,
There's
that's my view.
I would say this real quick. The experience I'm getting with in Linux is that it is changing pretty rapidly. Okay, and for the server administrators, changing and improving is a good thing. Okay, but at the same time, it can also be a challenge. What I'm saying about that is, if you are the server administrator and you have to manage numerous servers, and essentially the environment that your application runs in keeps changing rapidly, then you end up doing more work chasing those changes and adapting to what's going on, and that has its challenges in it on its own as well. So examples is ifconfig, which has been a Unix command that everybody's used for 20, 30 more years, probably more, or 40. And that command is there, and now it's being changed to in Linux world, IP-ADDR. System D replacing init, and
IP
my
tables.
IP tables getting replaced with NF tables. When you have a rapid succession of these changes, they might be better software, but they also become painful for the administrator to keep up with. And especially when you are trying to manage many, many servers, this actually can get a little bit more difficult. And when System D was introduced, we had some issues where it was giving us a number of issues. One of the issues was System D was shutting off FreeSwitch, shutting it off and starting it numerous times, because it thought that it was doing a good job and a good deed by restarting the service, because it wrongfully thought something was going wrong. So it shut it off. The company almost lost their whole business because they were having a hard time solving this. They called me after they had it taking a dive 2 times a day, and they called me about on the 5th day to help them with this. Anyway, we really didn't have time to mess around with it. So I mean, this is a production system, and it didn't happen on every system. It happened on some, but not every one. But this gave us lots of problems, to be honest. And I was looking for a command to tell system D, you are not allowed to restart this this service for any reason. I would rather the server melt down into a pile of slag before I want you to restart that service, because the customer originally thought FreeSwitch was crashing. It wasn't crashing. It was system D screwing up. So my point about that is sometimes those rapid changes actually make it harder on us to keep a stable server. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, or I mean, obviously there's tons of people doing some stable systems, but it definitely puts more load in our ball court and in our area that we have to deal with. One thing I do like about BSD is they make a good choice. I mean, they try really hard to make good choices. Once the good choice is made, you don't have to make a change. You don't have to change it up again unless you come up with something really, really significantly better. Microsoft, one of their problems was they would change the interface of the Windows desktop, for example, because they couldn't make up their mind. But in reality, if you make a really good decision, you don't have to change it, and you only start changing the software and adapting it when there actually is a really good reason. But if you made a really good reason in the first place, you don't ever have to change it. But the way it generally goes is we do find reasons to change things, or reasons that are actually acceptable, good enough to change them. But my point is there is some administrative overhead. One of the joys of BSD, they've made some good decisions, and then they didn't have to change their mind on many of those good decisions. It might be ironic that the speed of Linux might actually be one of the things that makes it harder to be an administrator for it. And BSD, ironically, that could be an advantage in some regard. It's a pro and a con. Everything generally has their pros and cons. So anyway, but this gets us, we've gotten a bit off topic. How about we get a little bit more back on topic? So
yes, the topic was you started the project of FusionPBX, that is the most famous, the most stable, and the most featureful interface and ecosystem around FreeSwitch. And I think that is I mean, it probably has like 95% of the graphical interface and ecosystem around FreeSwitch. And I think that it would be very interesting if you start just describing what FusionPBX can do from one side, from average company, and from another side for call center. And if you can describe it all for our public, and then we will go more in deep now and there.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm going to share, I haven't used this very much, but let me try and present. Can I be a presenter and share my desktop?
Yeah, there is a button at the
over
bottom.
there.
Present now.
Giovanni, may I ask you to mute because your keyboard clicking is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There a button at the bottom of the screen.
I see it. Great, thank you. Select window or screen. How about screen one? Okay, so you should see my screen. Can you see GitHub? All right. So I guess I'll start on the website. Here's FusionPBX's website. If you want to install it, you just need to install an operating system of your choice. It'll work on a Raspberry Pi as well. And so I took a machine and just a machine off of Volter.com and just started the install at the beginning of this as we were talking. And so here's a beginner system, and all I did was started with a empty version of Debian, and then I ran these two commands. When the two commands finished up, it gave me a username and password at the end. We choose a pretty long password because we like security. So
yeah, that's actually a very great feature, Mark. I was watching some of your earlier presentations, and I like that you take security very seriously.
well, we don't have a perfect record, but we do care about security. Whoops. Definitely care about security and work on it regularly. All right, so we'll go back here.
Just to give you a little story here, what happened. I asked some of my colleagues to help me to install some of the Raspberry Pi. We bought it for like one of the OpenSIPs projects we did a few years back. And he installed it. We got it running, and then like 2 years later, he obviously did not change the default password, which is something stupid like preset password. So there are some bots going around and hacking all those boxes. So we got some hacked Raspberry Pi in our office and started sending spam or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, security is pretty important. So by default, we have it install IP tables. And so these are our default rules. We pick up some of the friendly or not so friendly scanners and look for keywords trying to dump them if they try and say those particular words. Anyway, so this is our default config for IP tables. Anyway, so, but we've evolved. We didn't have that at the very beginning, but security is like a high jump. The height keeps going higher. In the Olympics, that seems to get higher every Olympics, where they are able to jump a little bit higher. So in the security world, it seems like that bar is constantly moving up. In fact, it seems like it's moving faster up all the time. Yeah. All right. So anyway, I logged in here and I have FusionPBX running. This shows the SIP profiles that FreeSwitch have. And if I want to add, if I want to make this multi-tenant, because one of the things that makes FusionPBX popular, or why people get excited about using it, is because of the multi-tenant nature. So I'm just going to make up a couple domain names. I'll use blue.fusionpbx as an example. Not currently pointed to the server, but it'll give a pretty good example. And then I'll add one green.fusionpbx.com. All right, you can see as soon as I added a second domain that the list of domains show up here in the corner. So my user account is currently on this IP address. I could move it to a different domain because I'm a super admin. I could push it over a different domain, and then I could delete the current domain if I wanted to. But so this is the domain, and this user is on this domain. If I go to dial plans, look at dial plans, you can see that these dial plans are assigned to this domain, the IP address in this case. Okay, now I'm going to switch to a different domain. And now we look and we see users. There's no users in this domain. if we look at dial plans, you can see that these dial plans are assigned to this blue domain.
I have a question for you, Mark,
Sure.
about this feature. So how do you separate this on the database level? Is it a single database or is it separate databases for each tenant?
That is a good question. It actually is a single database. What separates them? What separates them is each domain. So this is the one I started with. This is its UUID. And we use UUIDs in FusionPBX because they are cluster friendly. They're not super human friendly because that's not really easy to memorize. So, but it is very cluster friendly. So that's why we went with UUIDs. Initially, we did not, but we wanted to scale across multiple servers and be able to do multi-master replication. And in that design, this is our identifier for our row. That's our primary key. And the UUID, that makes it easier. So if I wanted to look at,
But
here.
one thing that I want to add is this intuition that FusionPBX had about using UUIDs is not only important for bidirectional replication, for clustering, etc. But it's so smart because now you have a very multi-tenant solution and you can actually change things without having to go and do problematic things with database. For example, you change a name of something, you don't go and change it in each table or things like that, because each reference is that UUID. So all is indirect, and all you change a name and you only change the name, but all the references between things still works, and that's very, very, very good.
Yeah, interesting. What about performance? Does it mean that you need to use this UID pretty much everywhere, right, Mark?
They're used everywhere, but they're indexed, and that it does well.
Okay.
And what about debugging? When you need to manually debug the database, and if things go wrong, if you have the right index, how do you deal with that using the UIDs? It should be painful, shouldn't it?
I would say it's a bit less convenient, sure.
But do you have any tips or any technology methodologies that you used or came to how you deal with it to simplify this thing? I mean, the debugging using these UIDs if you need to find a reference or something.
So, well, if you're trying to, yeah, I got an idea maybe what you're talking about. So, but I won't have anything in the cache. Let's see, or what happens is we cache to we don't have any calls on this system currently. So we don't have any dial plans that get cached here at the moment. But we actually, I'll explain the architecture a little bit. Okay, so we use the domain UUID so we can, then that segments or all the records for this domain have a domain UUID for each row that identifies that this domain is for this particular, this UUID represents for this particular customer. Okay, and the way FusionPBX works is when something is needed for FreeSwitch for XML, we do have FreeSwitch. FreeSwitch's config is in etc FreeSwitch on Debian on this case. So it'll read the information from here, but then the bulk of the information, the information that changes, gets stored in the database, and then when it's needed, it gets delivered on demand to FreeSwitch, and then it gets put in the cache. If the cache doesn't have a particular item, then it just adds it. It'll just look it up from the database and then cache it again. The next request will come back to the cache. And why I did this design, because it would work better across multiple servers. And we used to cache to memcache, but ironically, after some real world experience, we found the file cache actually performed better. Especially, you could put that cache in a RAM drive if you wanted even more performance, and that actually gives better performance. So that's the reason why you're doing that. And second, you could actually go look at this cache. So if you wanted to see what something looked like, you can look at the cache. So one of the questions was some ways to troubleshoot it. Well, if it's for the dial plan, the dial plans, I actually added the domain UUID to the dial plan. I don't have one of these cached at the moment to show you that, but it's, I guess I could if we wanted to.
But
And then the UUID is actually just an attribute of the XML, and then that tells you could go actually find that specific dial plan based on the UUID. So in that regard, we have a little bit. But most of the time, if you're not used to the UUIDs, after a bit of time, you get used to it. You just don't try to memorize them. You don't need to memorize them.
I have another question more on this.
One thing.
Question too.
Okay, one thing I will say first is this is the primary key right here. So if you're wondering what's the UUID or what's the primary key, it's right there. And if I go here, it's also right here. That's what I meant. You'll see that in the cache for dial plan. And those match up with what they show up here on the dial plan. So there are some amount of being able to debug that. And other than that, you just kind of get used to it when you worked with it a bit. Not the most convenient, but it is very convenient for multi-master replication. All right, the questions?
Yeah, my question was, I emptied you. My question was, what is the mechanism, how reliable it is, and how is the mechanics for the invalidation of the cache? So it's clear that you do cache on the file system, so is in the kernel space in RAM. So it's very, very fast. But how you invalidate the cache?
Well,
For example, when you change some configuration or things like that.
Well, it's simple. Let's see, if it was for an extension, we'll make a couple extensions. SIP users. Lovely. It's waiting for a dependency or something. Maybe, unless I got locked out. I'm still there. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm going to create a couple extensions. 3. All right, so now we have a few extensions. So if you are saying about if some item is cached or if the dial plan is cached, what happens is if I modify one of these dial plans and hit save, it knows that this is a dial plan and it's in this context, and it removes the cache from the file system. So as soon as you hit save, it will automatically remove it from the cache. The next time it's needed, it will just get pulled again. So
actually is in the code, is an action that the code makes explicitly to
yes,
delete the cache.
another option you could do is you could create a script and do a cron job with a find command looking for the age of the file, and you could tell it to delete that config based on it's been there for a half an hour, however long you want to keep the cache. So you can do it that way as well if you prefer to, but typically it does pretty well. Anyway, if you want to make sure your cache doesn't get old at all or stale, you can do that. But anyway, but normally if this item was cached, I hit save, it's going to remove that particular item from the cache. Well, I'm going to use GrandStream Wave here as a example real quick so I could actually make a phone call. So it's GrandStream Wave. This is a test server, by the way. I'm not going to use it for anything, but so it's safe to demonstrate. So one thing, the GrandStream Wave, it doesn't have, as far as I understand, push notifications, which would be nice. But so it's really good for testing, particularly because this QR code has all the registration in it. It's not encrypted or safe in that regard. So don't show this to people unless it's actually what I mean by that is it's not that you should pass these around too much.
So question about this, Mark,
registration information.
How do you use this QR code?
You install. Well, I'll try and show you on this. Just a second. I'll actually hold up my phone to the video.
We had a discussion one time about QR code. I'm more versed into putting into the QR code only an URL, so your client can get the configuration
It is
from the URL. And
from
that
the
will
provisioning,
be also
sure.
easier for the QR code because, for example, with low cost phones, this QR code is too complex to. I mean, I had problems with it.
Okay. If you're on any iPhone, even the cheapest one, you'll have no problem at all. But but it depends on the quality of the camera on the phone for sure. All right, so I'm going to I loaded GrandStream Wave right here. And if I go to the top where it says account settings.
Can you show us the screen, your camera, because we're still looking at your sharing.
Okay, let's see.
If you want to.
Oh, I want to, sure. So I just have to figure out how to do it. Start presenting, stop presenting. Okay. I thought you were still seeing my camera. I wasn't sure. All right, so thank you.
Sure.
All right, so that is, I've loaded GrandStream Wave in this case. Okay, and then I go up to the top and say account settings. Okay, and then I hit the plus. And then it says scan QR code. So then going back to sharing my screen.
Oh, you should stay with the camera. Just scan it with the phone, and we will see how it will provision it.
That's true. I guess I should, but I got this far, so. All right, so I'm scanned it, and then I'm going to switch back.
That's very interesting feature. So is it something that is standardized in some sense, or is it?
No, not
specific,
it's basically XML with that. We just send XML with registration information. Unfortunately, no standard for it. I sent out a request asking soft phone manufacturers to put in QR codes like 7 or 8 years ago. I'm like, that would be awesome. You could just scan it and it's registered. But it's they have I mean, if there are a few other soft phone manufacturers that have QR code options also. All right, so once I scan that QR code, it says, do you want to add the account? And so I say add account, and it turned green, so it's now registered. It doesn't let me present all the settings that I would like to. I often will, it uses UDP by default. I can click on that, switch it to TCP or TLS. Let's see. This soft phone has video capability as well as SIP ability to do SIP messages, so you can do SMS over it. All right, well, anyway, it is registered, so then I could try dialing voicemail. All right, speaker.
Please enter your password, followed by
good.
pound.
All right, so now I did that, and if we go back onto our topic here, we were talking about the caching, and I'll show you what happened in the cache. Originally, I started with just plain XML, and Fusion's GUI would write the XML to the file system. The downside to that is FreeSwitch. When I started FreeSwitch, it was one gigantic XML file to configure everything. Okay, it didn't take too long to think that that was not optimal. So it was then broken down. Giovanni, you're muted. But I thought you agree with me. Anyway, it created one gigantic XML file, and actually the way it worked is it would create that, well, originally it was just one gigantic XML file, and you needed to be really careful not to break the XML anywhere, or it would all break. Okay, before FreeSwitch did their 1.0 release, they broke it down into sections, so you could do includes of the XML, and then you have multiple files, and now it's quite a few files. So I'm going to go back to show my screen. Oh, I didn't see if you could see my whole screen. So all right, back to, I'm getting better at it, hopefully.
Practice.
Yeah. All right, so anyway, when I made that phone call, you can see it created, when I registered, it created this one right here. When I made that phone call, it created this cache right here for the dial plan. If I go open up that cache, this is the XML that was handed over to FreeSwitch. And you can see right here, this is the UUID for that particular record in the database. If I go down a bit further, it's wrapping a bit. It's not fitting very well, but anyway, there's another one. All right, so, and then the question was, what happens on the XML when I go to a dial plan over here, and I edit one and hit save? It should, hopefully, clear that cache. Yep, so that dial plan went away right there. And it would do the same thing for the extension. All right, so I'm gonna look at this one. Well, I'll just do a cat. So this is the XML that is sent over to FreeSwitch again. for the extension, the SIP it's for this right here. That's the XML. I registered to this one and it then cached that item. When we create extensions, we don't ask for the password. Humans, we generally don't come up with good safe passwords. So we generate by default, a much longer password. That's actually controlled, secure. Well, that's not the right word.
Quick question about this, Mark.
Sure.
Do you support any other on top of the passwords? Do you support like multi-factor authentication and all that?
Okay, so we'll have our multi-factor authentication for logging into the web interface. We'll have that within the next week or two, hopefully. So at the moment, I'd have to say no, we don't have it yet, but we're working on that. We'll get it done pretty soon. As far as the extension goes, this allows you to control the for an extension what kind of password it is. A default system, we use 20-character password, and the password has lowercase, a number, a special character, and uppercase. I'm not super fond of, well, I don't care about that when it's auto-generated. Actually, I guess I have it off, but it's one of the, yeah, right here it says off. It's disabled at the moment, but but it's 20 characters long, so I guess it's lowercase, number, and uppercase by default. And then the user accounts, they can be controlled by default. We set them to 12. If you don't like it being that long, you can reduce it. I decided to try and go for more secure by default. So right here, this is requiring special characters. If you don't want to require the users to do special characters, you could just go here and say false. And then it wouldn't be required. Anyway, we will have more multi-factor authentication. We'll have that very soon. It's like I said, that bar is constantly going up. It didn't.
Yeah. I'm not saying.
But it is pretty important today. So we will have that very soon. All right. So, but one of the things about FusionPBX is it's designed to be very customizable. So even the theme that we have here can be controlled even on a per domain basis or on a global basis. Right here, the background color, if we wanted to switch it to something else.
Maybe I want to interrupt you a moment. Sure. One thing that I saw that is so important for my customers, and I think is done very, very, very well into Fusion, is that you have a lot of roles for users, and you can invent as many roles as you want. Why this is important? That's because both if you are an ITSP and you are doing multi-tenancy for your customers, or if you are an enterprise and you have different departments with different responsibilities, you want to give some users the right to do this, some other user the right to do that, etc., etc. And the interesting things is that in Fusion, for each kind of feature, for each module Fusion is made of, you have so many permission. So, for example, you can list the extensions, but you cannot edit it, or you can create, but you cannot delete, etc., etc., etc. So it's very, very, very granular. and you can distribute all this kind of permission in a very organized way because you can create roles and each real person, a real world person, can have one or more roles, and so the permission will add each other. Maybe you can, you Mark can speak a little bit about this thing, roles, permissions, etc. Because I saw that is a very, very, very important selling point for the whole system.
Great. Okay, thank you, Giovanni. So if we go here to advanced group manager, this is our roles as Giovanni was calling it, and many times is referred to as roles in other software too. So in FusionPBX, these are the default roles or the default groups. So there is super admin. Now what a super admin can do, a super admin by default has ability to go across to all domains. And this list here that says advanced, this is for a super admin. Really, now today, I wished I had called it global admin, because that's a bit more intuitive. At the time, I was thinking of like, well, I didn't think of the name global admin, which I think would be even a bit better. So when you create the new system, your user account will be put, it says admin here, but you're put in the super admin group. And you can choose what group to put the user in by picking one and hitting add right here. So super admin is able to have, it has almost all permissions, but a super admin doesn't have every single permission. There are some permissions that hide and show columns or features, usually columns. So a super admin may not have every single, they won't have every single permission. I'm trying to find an example. So conferences active. If we have every single permission here, there's so many buttons on that page for looking at conferences that the page is half buttons. So to prevent that, we didn't give every single button out, but we give the option so that you could enable it if you want it or need it. All right, so anyway, super admin is able to see everything on every domain. They're able to edit dial plans. They're able to add dial plans. If you are just a regular administrator, an administrator is really the domain administrator. So let me change these descriptions and maybe, so this is a domain admin. So they're able to be an administrator. They can do things for their particular domain. So you could have customers, if you trust them, for this responsibility, if they have an IT staff, for example, and they would have control to add things to the system, add users, add extensions. They do not have ability to do anything that could traverse the domain, that could cross domains. They don't get dial plan. They can see the dial plan manager, but they wouldn't be able to edit it. They can't delete it, but they can create like auto attendants, an IVR like an auto attendant. They could create a ring group, but they don't have, and then that actually will create a dial plan, but they don't have direct control to write these dial plans. That's for security. It's multi-tenant. We have to keep the separation between the different tenants. Otherwise, it's not secure or safe. So one thing I emphasize a bit, usually when I teach this, is do not give an admin the ability to edit these dial plans. They're dangerous. They could be unsafe to be able to do that. So because you can change things and send calls to other domains. So
This
anyway.
from one side, but from the other side, particularly when you are giving service as a multi-tenant to your customer. Let's say you have a cloud PBX provider that gives services to small home offices and things like that. If they got to modify dial plans that are, useful to other things, or they just add something into one extension and that breaks the logic of the whole application, you end out in a nightmare of support, because you will never think that they have tampered with something. So I think it's very, very important to exactly know who can modify things, and also you can show after that beautiful auditing feature that is into Fusion, to see the history of who has done what.
Oh,
Mark,
right there.
Mark may have a question.
Okay.
And so did I get it right that the dial plan is shared between the tenants? So so there is no dial plan per tenant, but there is a common dial plan that is shared between the tenants.
There
So
is a different dial plan per tenant. So, but let me explain that a little bit more. So this one right here, you can see this one actually says global. So when I opened earlier, I was looking straight at the database. There were some dial plans that had the domain UUID was empty. When the domain UUID is null, it's global. And then with this context means that the combination of both of these, saying global and the context here saying domain name, this makes it actually a global dial plan. So this is an example of a global dial plan here. And so that's a global one, but this one is assigned to this specific domain and to this specific context.
And so, but if you're logged in as a tenant, do you see everything, including global dial plans, but you can only edit the dial plan items that are in your domain, or
No,
could you?
the way it works is a super administrator, someone in the super admin group or the global administrative group, they are able to edit and add or change any domain dial plan. If you are an administrator, that is not safe to give them. All they have ability to do is look at this list. A regular administrator can only look at this list. Why do we give them ability to even look at the list? It's because there are things like paging, this is a feature code, *724. The *22 is log in and out of a conference room. I'm sorry, a call center for an agent. Eavesdrop, *33, paging in a specific extension. So we want them to be able to see this list primarily. An administrator, a regular admin account is able to, they don't see this menu here for the domains at all. They only have access to their own domain. So
understood, Mark, but they
okay.
cannot they cannot edit the dial plan, even if it's only relevant to their own domain. They only can look at it. So only the global administrators can edit the dial plan.
But most of the time they don't really need to. If you wanted to create, if an admin needed to create a dial plan, every feature has a dial. I mean, every feature like
Mark,
an IVR or a ring group, it has a dial plan.
I want to interrupt and make a little explanation. It is a tricky language because dial plan is used often both to denotate the whole number of extensions and the single extension. So dial plan is let's say the list of instructions and also the single instruction. This is an ambiguity in language. That's from one side. From the other side, another thing that is important too is the let's call it the domain administrator. So your customer that has his own small office has a dumbed down interface where he can add something to dial plan. For example, he can map an incoming DID, or he can add an IVR and things like that. What he cannot do is to see what inside each extension. So he cannot go into the XML and modify it, but he can add and delete things that are only relevant to his own domain.
Yeah, I understood. I think Mark also, at the end of his explanation, provided the insight is that basically the non-global admins don't need to go deep into dial plan, because most of the features they would need it to in the dial plan are available, as Mark showed it on the screen, through those templates. So the admin, the tenant admin, can do most of the work using those predefined templates that would be added to the dial plan, and so they don't actually need to tamper with the dial plan as whole. So I got it. Understood.
Right.
Thank you.
And when you add, and when an admin adds a ring group, it adds the dial plan for them. And when an admin adds a when they add an auto attendant or an IVR or a conference room, it'll add the dial plan for them. That is allowed. They're just not allowed to go in and do more advanced stuff.
Manual editing. Understood. I got it.
Yeah, they need a simpler interface anyway. So to keep it simple, and so that they don't, and so it doesn't scare them. So anyway, so, and as what happens is the more features that we create, the more items that show up in the list. So if I say conference, all right, and then we could direct calls inbound by creating a example here. I'm just going to make a fake number. Here's Idaho's area code. So I'm just going to say 555-1234, and then we could direct that call to a ring group or an IVR, because I just created those. Here's my conference I just set up. I'd send it to the IVR in this case. Actually, in this, I'd take that prefix and do here. So it allows the call to come in with 10 digits or 11 digits by doing it that way.
Oh, hold on here. That's one of my favorite topics. Do you use plus for the numbers, or do you not use plus? You know, the international format.
What I actually did was when it creates it, it does both. It allows both.
Oh, great! Because those are those topics never ending. Do you use plus, or don't use plus? Okay.
Yeah. At earlier on, I didn't understand the usefulness for plus, and I understand it. I get it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty useful, actually. So we're treating this as, I really need to change the label here. We're treating this as the country code. So if this is deemed the country code, then we can assume the plus. And so this destination, inbound destination, essentially, it's right here, destinations, and we set up an inbound destination. It writes the more complicated inbound route for you. This is basically it really is an XML dial plan, and it writes the a regular expression here that says the plus is the question mark means that that's optional. And then this says that the 1 is optional. And then this passed my phone number through the round brackets, treat it as it captures the digits in case I wanted to use them in a variable. We're not doing that in this case, but it gives the possibility. So anyway, in this particular case, it makes it possible to do E164 with the plus, or without the plus if you would like. So it can support both.
Yeah, and by the way, Denis, this is something that I think we do the same thing for at least 15 years. So we have similar regex to translate numbers or validate numbers. Anyway, just
Yeah, it's good. Exactly. That's because people are confused. Somebody understand the meaning of the plus. Somebody doesn't. And if you simplify this for the users, that's very good.
For setting up a call outbound. So I just demonstrated there by creating this how you would route calls inbound on the destinations, and then tell it where you want it to go. And then if we wanted to do outbound, we need to do if you need to do SIP registration, you would use a gateway and then tell it to register. So this matches actually FreeSwitch's terminology in the XML. So I'm going to actually make this more useful for people getting started. I'm going to go into FreeSwitch and I'm going to type in ITSP providers. Okay, and this is a list of various providers around the world. It's definitely not a complete list because there are many providers around the world, but it gives you a good idea when you see them here.
quick question for you, Mark, on this. Are you testing with those providers, or how do you, or how do they get on this list?
And they get on the list by people contributing the configuration to be on the list. So
Okay.
really,
this is a part.
So
of,
it's more practical question. For example, we have Denis here who has provides a service.
no, but this is just a FreeSwitch documentation.
So you ask to be able to contribute some information to the FreeSwitch documentation.
Oh yeah, okay, thanks.
Yep. So I'm going to just use this one. I'm going to pull up a couple different ones. What I want to point out here is when it says gateway here, it says parameter username, from user, password, expire seconds, register, retry seconds. So all of those, from user, username, expire seconds, those are all, they match up perfectly with what you're seeing right here. If FreeSwitch used a dash, I put a space. And then I camel cased it so that this is the first letter is uppercase. In this case, it says from user. So everything ties in specifically, or pretty on this page, pretty much everything ties in directly with what you'll see here. I did this because there are thousands of pages in FreeSwitch's documentation, and I didn't want to abstract from their documentation. I thought, they've got pretty good documentation. Now I got off of the list. They've got good documentation, so I wanted to be able to utilize some of that and not alienate from it. By the way, I would point out also, FreeSwitch developers, they created a provider called SignalWire, and SignalWire is now the sponsor of FreeSwitch. You can really see that now because FreeSwitch put that on GitHub and then did it under SignalWire name. And this is the FreeSwitch's actual official repository on GitHub. So, but SignalWire is now, it's the FreeSwitch original developers, and they are the sponsors now of FreeSwitch, one of the big sponsors of FreeSwitch, obviously. So here's an example of them. their case setting up a gateway. You can also, really, what does a gateway need? You give it a name. In this case, in Fusion, the name could be anything you want. Just make it intuitive. I'll use SignalWire as an example to, yeah, just as a good example, because free switches, I mean, they're being sponsored by SignalWire. So we'll use that one, I guess, as an example. Okay, so they do SIP registration. So they're on their website, once you've logged in, they're going to give you a username and a password. I don't have an example for this, so I'm just going to say user and password for something short. And we'll go back. They're going to also give you a example link. You get this also from your account. And we just make our way through this information. You will need it to be registration, but I'm putting in fake information, so I'm going to set registration defaults. Okay, normally when this is correct, it'll say REGED as registered. Okay, and then once we want to make, if we want to make calls through that particular gateway, we can hit add. And then we select our gateway, SignalWire in this case. And then if you're in North America, you say North America, it fills in the regular expression for you. You can type them in there too if you like, but most people are probably going to use this drop-down list or make some adjustments to it. Okay, I can't remember whether SignalWire wanted to see how many digits they want to see. Oh, I wanted to mention this to the free switch documentation team. That's Twilio right there. I think they need to update their message here a little bit.
Copy and paste error. So common.
Somebody must have copied this as they start. So we need to do a +1. It looks like they want to see E164. So to fill that in here, we add the plus, because we're capturing our digits inside that round brackets, which means we're stripping off the plus and the 1. This will add it back on. So here I could put in a description. It's really 10 to 11 digits plus E164. I don't know. Take that. Okay, and then I'm gonna hit save.
And why is the length of the digits string is relevant here?
The reason why is because it's a good question, because this dial plan right here, this is an outbound route, okay? It generated it for us. You don't need to worry about that. It looks complicated, but it matters because this really is a dial plan in the same context of this. So the call's going through this dial plan, and then it determines that it's an outbound route based on that we want to send it out based on the number of digits. So it's going through here, and the order number here is 10, 15. There we go. We got our first auto attendance there set to 101. Our outbound routes are at order number 100. They're not shown here because we grouped them in this list instead, but this is a dial plan. So the call's going through and trying to determine if you're trying to make a call outbound. Some people will use dial 9 followed by some number of digits to go out, or just 9 as the prefix. In this case, I'm just detecting if it's E164, 11 digits, or 10. All right, this right here is actually checking to see if it's an extension, because there are some people putting a full number right here. I'll go back to my example I did earlier, 555, 1, 2, 3, 4. Some people will put a 10 or 11 digit one here. So in order to support that, we wanted to make sure it's not going internally. So we actually are looking to see if it is a SIP user. That's what that's determining. They're determining as if it's a SIP user. As long as it isn't one, then follow and then go to the outbound route.
I had a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Mark, do you have any way to test actual dial plan without dialing the number?
Can I test?
On the
Yeah, like,
website.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
put
from
the
the
number.
website. Yeah, put the number and say this is who is calling.
Yeah, and see
what
the
is- what is
routing.
going camp. Yeah, yeah.
So you wanted me to make a
Simulate
Like simulate the call, not really make it.
and see how the routing would go.
Sure, that's an interesting question. I do have the soft phone, so I can actually make a call off the soft phone and it'll go through the dial plan here. All right.
Yeah,
So
but this is a little bit different, because sometimes you might just want to see the how the call would go. And bug.
sure.
Because when you have when you have a huge dial plan, it could be a little bit cumbersome to test every time through the soft client. It's a good idea. We also have some of those. Yeah. Those features. If the PIBX users, because I can see, Max, you're coming from the carrier side where they have a tons of routes, and we definitely need this one. In the PIBX environment, you normally have 1, 2, maybe 3 uplink service providers. So it's much more easier to have an overview of that. So it wasn't such a big issue probably so far.
So I'm not sure if I'm understanding. You're not wanting to see that. I mean, this is an example of a call. When I dialed earlier, I called *97. That went to the, and so what happens in this particular case, that call is going through this dial plan. It's the same dial plan here. Is going through this and looking for that call for the *97. It's looking for this, well, not that one. 97, there we go. It's looking for this dial plan right here. So what's happening is it's going through that list with the log viewer here. And it's saying, well, domain variables, so it's applying a variable here, it's applying some global variables. And it's going through, do we want to record the call or not? So if you mean what we're doing usually for troubleshooting is we'll look at this going through there.
Mm-hmm.
All of these
but
are
this only works for the like very high level admin, right? Because you would need to go deeply into the system to figure out.
This is available to a super somebody in the super admin group.
I'm just trying to show you what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But you can continue. I'll get.
All right. Yeah. All right. So anyway, what we'll normally do is troubleshoot it. This right here, every call has a UUID, a unique ID. And if you determine that this is the call I want to pay attention to, then you can actually put it there. I usually will increase this in case it's gone through a large amount of the log. And then that allows you to look at just a specific call. And right here, it matched the dial plan. And then it actually starts to proceed to actually do what the dial plan is saying. So there it's showing us the SDP. And it's actually performing that we don't want to record the call. Yeah, and then sending it over to voicemail.
Yeah, Mark, could you please come back to this dial plan definition where you had this 10 to 11 digits rule?
Sure.
Yeah, because here exactly. Yeah, because in Germany we have a specific case with the open numbering plan, so you never know how long the digit string could be. So we have numbers that they may be 6-digit long, up to 13-digit long.
So you would. All right. So if we're not doing this E164, for example, you said 6 up to 13.
Right.
Say like that. And this would be okay as long as you don't have any long as you don't have
Extensions.
many extensions. What you really want to do
Mhm.
is plan your system. So maybe your extensions are 3 or 4 digits. And if your extensions are 3 digits, you could then have your IVRs could be at 3 digits, or they could be at 4 digits. So in this particular case here, you just would want to keep all of your internal stuff less than 6 digits.
Understood. Yeah, makes sense.
Or if you wanted to have more than 6 digits, you could add a prefix. In America, they do a 9 as a prefix to go out, or you could put in anything in here to make sure that it is going, that it's a number that you really do want to go out, and then you can call it using a prefix that way. You just need to have some logical way to indicate. In one way, you could do it by how many numbers, how many digit length it is. And if that's not good enough, you could do it with a prefix.
Yeah, I think that was a very good advice for anyone who would be watching it on the internet after a while. That think about either you do your extension shorter than the longest number in the public network, or you do these prefix calling like dial 9 or 0. In Europe, it's often 0, and then you get the phone line outside. So yeah, that was a good advice. Thanks.
So if you wanted, and you said it started with a 0, then you could do it like this, and then you could prefix, put that back on there as the prefix down here, adding the 0. You could actually put the 0 inside the round bracket. That would capture it. Whoops, I guess I did that wrong. I did it again. Huh. We'll do it a different way then. Okay, and then in that case, the 0 would be included. And you said 6 to 13. But are they, even when they're smaller ones, are they starting with a 0?
Yes.
Oh, they are. Well, that's useful. So you have your built-in prefix right there.
Yeah.
I got something that I wanted to show you in terms of that test
Sure.
functionality. Second, I'll show you.
All right.
This is just some of our dev systems here in the office. And so what we have is a feature where you could basically simulate the call without actually making it. So you can say, or what if this particular account makes a call and it dials 1, 6, 7, 8, 9,
I see what you mean.
for example. And then the system would first it could check for any errors. So it basically says there is no rate for this user to call this number. Obviously, it does not give any. Let's pick some other.
I see what you mean. That's a cool idea.
And then if it's actually something that would work, it would basically tell you what is the routing group used, is the tariff.
Destination gateway and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, you also see what destination, what route, and what destination gateway it's going to take, and all that parameters. Anyway, just a good idea maybe for some of the future releases.
I see your point. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it.
Anyway, let's maybe get back to the track. I think we're got a little bit too deep, too technical. So maybe talk more more about your kind of business strategy, or how do you
But
do you?
I would like Mark also to illustrate another part, maybe just 5 minutes, but it's very important because a lot of customers use it. And inside FusionPBX, there is not only an enterprise PBX, but also a call center system. And this can be very important, and maybe Mark can illustrate it. And just to close it, also the conferencing system with the rooms, etc. Because with coronavirus and all the things is very, very important, and all kind of people is going to that way. So please, Mark, if you can show maybe short, but it's very important, both the call center and the conference center.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
Okay, all right. Go back. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, click share.
I'll get there. Whoops, not that. Wait. I slipped and said screen 2, but it's empty. All right, so Giovanni mentioned about that he wants me to talk about the conferencing, for example. To really show conferencing, I really need to have more. I mean, I need to get up another phone, but I could do that. Let's see. I'll do another soft one.
If you need one, I can dig one.
If I knew, I would have provided you a SIP trunk so we could call you and test the conferencing and so on. So if there'll be some other presentation, I could provide you trunks with numbers in US or in Europe, so we could do some testing.
That would be cool.
Yeah. We actually did something with the Open SIPs guys and Giovanni. One of our first episodes. We did calls through the trunks and to the SIP end.
There we go. So now if we go look at registrations page, which I didn't show yet, that shows now that I have 2 extensions on the system now. So first of all, I could create I can go to conference centers. There's 2 conferences in Fusion. This one is the simple one. It's mainly just create a conference room, dial 2, and then we call 201. And then we're able to make a conference call. And then there's a second one is conference centers. This is more elaborate. This one has lots of settings to choose from. We'll try that one in a minute. How about we just try the simple one? So this one is 201. So I'll make a call to that.
Currently the only person in this conference.
Okay, and then I'll join with this other one and let me mute. So I don't do feedback. That's always fun. Oh. There we go. So I could go here. Oh, getting that feedback. Come on. There we go. All right, so here, this is for administrators or people in a super admin group. They can see all domains. If you hit show all, they'd be able to see all calls on all domains. All right, but then we have under conferences. So right here we have 2 members in the conference. And if we were actually running video at the moment, it would also show us an icon to see if they are doing video. So with that, you can have multiple video phones, and whoever's speaking would be able to talk and would be seen. FreeSwitch does have video ability to mix the video as well. Just keep in mind that uses a lot of CPU. So if you don't have that enabled, then FreeSwitch will just show who is talking. So if you want to control who's talking, then you can mute or unmute.
We're now muted. We're now unmuted.
Deaf means that you can't hear. And now if I go undeaf, I can hear again. We could lock the conference so nobody else can join. Anyway, but this gives us some conferencing here. And now you would be able to see the video. If you were doing video, you see it on your video capable phones, soft phones. This one can do it also. Anyway, if I wanted to end the conference, I can say end. Now I'm going to show, I'll go to the conference center real quick. No, I hit the wrong one. And so with the conference center, when I create the conference center, it creates a dial plan for this conference. Well, I'm going to say 202. And this one, I'll say conference center. Could be any name you want. This is how big you want. The PIN number is required on this one. This is how big you want the PIN number to be. The PIN number is like the room number. So it helps direct calls to the right room. So in this particular case, if you want it to be a really big conference center, then you could have 9 digits for your PIN number. For simplicity here, I'm going to use 3 digits. And I'm going to hit save. Okay, and then I'm going to go to rooms, and I'm going to add a room. Okay, and the name is optional, but for simplicity, I'm going to use 555, and participant PIN is 333. When you create these, it will automatically generate a PIN number that's available. And this, I'm just going to say demo, I guess. The rest of these, well, there's a bunch of them. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We're going to see it from the other view here. These all can be toggled. So the secure is whether to wait for the moderator to join the conference before the conference starts. This is whether to record the conference. I'll hit record. Whether to announce the person. It'll ask them, please say your name. If you don't want that, you can just simply click on it to turn it off. Count to see how many people are in the conference, or state it, announce the recording, and then mute. I mean, this is whether they're muted when they come in. If you're a moderator, if you're a regular participant, you don't get muted. If you're the moderator, if you're a regular participant member, you do get muted if this is true. If you're a moderator, you don't. Anyway, and then sounds, this is the beep when somebody comes in or leaves. Okay, so we're going to give it a try. So this one, I dial it by dialing that conference room number, which was 202.
Please enter the conference PIN number.
And then it's asking for a PIN number. I'm going to use the member PIN on this one.
Please say your name after the tone.
Bob.
Recording started.
Okay, then I'm going to come over on another one and come in, and I can go to view and give it a call. And I'll put in the moderator PIN this time.
Please say your name after the tone.
Mark.
Recording started. There is one other member in this conference. Has entered the conference.
Okay, I need to mute.
Quick question for you, Mark, on this one.
Sure.
For those prompts, is it localized? Do you have like different languages, or is it something that the user can upload?
It is. Yeah, there are FreeSwitch has recordings for multiple languages. I'm not sure that they have every language, but they have multiple languages. If I look at Switch here, it's
not only FreeSwitch distribute for multiple languages, but there are at least 3 providers, commercial providers, that give you a complete set of pre-recorded prompts, etc., etc. And those commercial provider voice, it costs very little, like like couple of $100 for each language, and is complete. And they have so many languages.
Oh, cool.
And
Thank you. So you guys, you just using I guess whatever free switch has. You don't provide your own print.
not currently, no. We provide, yeah, we just start it out. It gets installed with English, and then in Debian, there's a package for each sound for various languages. And then there are providers on the internet. You do a search for free switch sounds or FusionPBX sounds, and some of those providers will come up.
Yeah, but on at least on the FusionPBX site, is it something that you can select? Say this extension prefers German. This extension prefers Italian, or how does it work? If you need a multi-tenant system with people from different locations.
Okay, so if it's on a dial plan basis, you can set that as a variable here. And let's see, I think I have it also set here. Yeah, so default language, default voice, and default dialect here.
Oh yeah, I see.
So
Okay.
EN US Cali, that's the voice there. And these can be set like default voice right there. It can be set on a per domain basis, or they can be set, so they can be set globally here, or they can be set on a specific domain right here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Default voice.
That's cool.
You do action.
So it's pretty flexible, right? You can customize it on pretty
FusionPBX is very flexible. Between the default settings, and we 947 different settings that you can change and customize. The way we work with the dial plan allows it to be very customizable. And then the permissions allow you to adjust permissions there. That's very customizable.
Oh yeah, we've seen that.
And another very important thing in Fusion is that Fusion do not use a special terminology, and have not invented some special abstraction on top of free switch. So
Yeah.
it is the same terminology and the same concepts. So the all the documentation of free switch you can apply one-to-one to Fusion, and you can drill down into Fusion and add things just by studying free switch documentation. So it's very flexible, smart, and has a lot of graphics, all flash and bangs, but it doesn't obstacle you if you want to go down at feature level or to the near the metal.
Yeah.
I tried really hard to make it so that Fusion would be a little like an onion. We make it simpler for the basic users, a little more for the admin user. A super admin sees a lot. I mean, can see some more than some people want to see, but it's really designed to be able to peel back the layers like an onion. So you can keep back and go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's similar to Firefox, because the more you know about Firefox, you can go in to various levels, controlling and customizing Firefox, and peel back the layers and get as deep as you want to go. Fusion, I've tried to do that, and try and make it so for your more basic users, they get a simpler interface. For your more advanced users, they can get as deep as they want to go.
Regarding interface, maybe a short question. Are there options for branding the web interface?
Yes, all of these themes. I teach how to do the branding actually in the class. So one question I think was brought up earlier is how do we actually do that? I mean, how are we maintaining it? The project sustainability, let's put it that way. So for a long time, I did it with purely just with per hour support and training. The way I'm doing it now is like ongoing training. So let's go here. So if we click on members here, we set it up so that there's different membership levels. Here is essentially you come in, you can take when we have a real class, I mean an in-person one, we'll do one online and in person sometimes. It's going to be a little while before in person, but anyway, but those classes are recorded, and anybody who signs up as a green member, which is $100 US a month, gets the previous classes that were recorded. We do a monthly training to show what's been changing. There's some documentation, as well as the class teaches how to do the branding. You can also figure it out. Lots of people have. Anyway, but by doing this approach, it helped us to have some money so that we could hire more people to help. And as people kept asking us for support, we really needed to grow a support team that could help answer people's questions. And that's what this is really for. It was modeled after some people that begged me to do support for them, and they wanted to do it. So I had one company that was paying me $500 a month for just taking care of the things they needed. And so it comes with the same things as green, but then this one comes with 1.5 hours of support. This one comes with 3. This one comes with 6. Anyway, but that then I actually modeled it after my son's Taekwondo, because what I found with their Taekwondo is that because they had some money, they could do a better job. What I mean by that is in my son's Taekwondo, when I went in there, my wife found this place, and because he was like, I want to do Taekwondo, my youngest son. And I went in there, and they had people greet you at the door. They have usually 4 people teaching the class, and they split it up into 4 groups, teaching multiple classes. And I was so impressed by what they were doing. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So what I realized is when you have some operating money, you can do a better job. And so that's what we are working on. We've been doing this only for about a year, the blue, purple, gold membership concept. The green membership was previously called continuing education. What had happened is I taught the class, but we were changing the things, not for the sake of changing them, but because there were good improvements to put in there. And not enough people were keeping up on what was going on. So this was a way of disseminating and constantly sharing a bit more of how to use FusionPBX. Anyway, since doing this, it has dramatically offloaded the, I still have a big workload, but it's meant that now there's actually some people to help me. So I have some other developers that help, that I pay to do some even boring stuff.
How big is the team, Mark, right now?
Well, you're asking how many people total?
Yeah. Oh, like just ballpark, I guess.
Well, it's not a big number. If you include me, there are 8 people total, and 3 of those people are part-time.
Yeah, it's pretty good number for this. I would say for the project which has been around for not so long, I guess. And you said you're only started doing those levels for a year, right? So
yeah, the green level membership we started 2 years ago. The other ones that are including support, only been doing that for a little over a year. So anyway, that is definitely helped make things a little bit, working out a bit better. It was becoming way too much load for one person. And yeah, just, I started.
I would say that's a good problem to have. It means that your product is popular.
It's not, yeah, well, I started this as a, for fun, I love to build. It made me really, I got excited about building things. And so that's really why I started it. And then eventually it turned more and more into a job. And then it started exceeding my capacity for a single person. So anyway, this model helps make this a little more doable. I thought it was also a little bit like a workout gym membership. Everybody could go, you could do exercise at home. You could do push-ups at home, sit-ups at home, and there's plenty of videos online teaching you how to exercise. But people still go to a gym membership, not at the moment, but it's still nice to work with other people. And so that's what it was modeled after. I think it's a pretty good way to go for open source. Example of it, if you went to SQLite website, they have something kind of similar there too. Well, there's a little more. Let's see, so support. I don't know if I could find the exact professional support like that one. There we go. This is, they've actually tiered things out. Nobody could say that SQLite is not open source. It's actually the most distributed database in the world. It is on your cell phone, probably multiple times. It is on your on almost every browser. Anyway, for them, it's open source, but they do have options that cost money. Some of them don't look super cheap, but on the other hand, how many of us that use and benefit from SQLite are paying any of that? Not very many, but they do make. Anyway, I'm just saying that then generally, if you want to have a project be sustainable year after year after year, there does have to be some money. It doesn't seem possible otherwise. Very easily done otherwise.
No, absolutely, Mark. And I also think it's a great thing to have your hobby and being paid for it first. And second, I don't think that there is anything wrong with being able to make money with your open source project. And the best way to do so far is to provide those professional services, and where you have the benefit of being sustainable and still providing the open source product to the public. So it's a great way to go.
Thank you. Anyway, I saw somebody on Twitter, it's like, is anybody have a consortium for open source projects? And I pointed them to this page and they're like, wow, this is, but these consortium members, these are like big sponsors. These could be like enterprise, very big companies that are
something like Microsoft scale.
Yes, these are for big companies that would generally become a consortium membership. Anyway, I'm not trying to do anything like that, but it's more like smaller amounts for more people, and it adds up. So
yeah, but never say never.
True. Even the Linux Foundation that hired Linus Torvalds. It actually Microsoft became a board member now, but there are multiple board members from various corporations that help run that Linux Foundation and planning it. Anyway, it's interesting. So yeah, the Linux Foundation also has something very similar to this concept too. So, and that helps guide Linux. In the case of BSD, their sustainability for FreeBSD, they have the FreeBSD Foundation, and that one's all donation based.
Yeah, but I think that well, there was like huge discussion on some internal FreeBSD mailing list about the recent change in plans for the X system to go for Linux, at least part of their TrueNAS products, and I
Yeah,
think
I saw.
FreeBSD Foundation is a little bit different because it's not really an organization who kind of drives the project. It's more an outlet for people to donate who could not contribute like code or something, but have some money. But still they do pretty good job funding at least some of the work that is done. Project. Anyway,
Well, it would be even. I would love it if FreeBSD got even more funding, because anything to drive it forward faster, or any open source project, because the concept is to benefit people for generations. That's what makes it more exciting. It's not just talking to people, but it also is having your life impact many lives in a positive way. That got me excited. Working on telephony so that you help give a leg up to developing countries, because normally telephony is too high a price for your developing nations, and that means that there would only be a few players that'd be able to be involved. This brings it down to more people, and then more people can benefit, which actually makes it a whole lot more exciting, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely, but not from the point of view of big operators.
Yeah, they're probably less excited about it. We've seen some interesting articles from some large companies, and yeah, anyway, they may not be super excited about it, but the smaller operators and the people without piles of money generally benefit more, which I think is wonderful. So, okay, Giovanni wanted me to show one more feature. I mean, there's lots of features we could talk about it for a very long time, but
oh yeah.
we're not going to do that. So, all right, so I'm going to show the call centers real quick. Okay, so let's see. So I'm going to go add an agent. Okay, before that, I showed you gateways. You can also create bridge statements, and these bridge statements allow you to send calls out to any server, any VoIP system, to any address, domain name, to whatever port number you want to for SIP. So you can create these, and then I'll just try and write one up real quick. From well, no, I won't do it from memory, I guess. All right, so fake IP, nah. I'll do demo2.fusionpbx.com. There we go. This is my fake bridge statement to something that doesn't actually exist, but okay. So that just defines a bridge statement. From that, we could actually create an outbound route that actually uses that instead of a gateway. So example, there's bridges, and then I could specify, and here's some other regular expressions too, by the way. Down here, I have dial 9, so you can see what a prefix looks like. Forgot to show that. Anyway, but now that I have my bridge statement, I'm going to go to agents. I could actually set up let's see, so this says agent name here, and I'm just going to add one for extension 101. This right here, you can have your extensions and it would ring the extension, but we actually have the ability to send it to a gateway as well, or to the bridge statement. Oh, but I need to adjust my bridge statement slightly. Anyway, normally it's going to go to extensions, but you do have the ability to send it to one of these. So that if you wanted it to, that looks a little more complicated there, but really this would allow you to put in a, use my fake phone number again. But anyway, this would allow you to create a contact that actually went out to a mobile phone or some external number for this call center. Normally, for simplicity, we're going to do like that. So extension 101 becomes 101 here. Okay, anything in bold is actually what's required. This is the only one that's required. Well, these two are required. That's it. This defines a status, like whether we're available all the time. I'm going to leave the statuses off at the moment and hit save. So, okay, so I defined one agent. I'm going to stick with one agent at the moment for simplicity and get this demonstrated a little quicker. So then I'm going to create a queue for a call center queue, and I'm going to give this extension 203 here, and I'll just call it call center. When I hit save, this is going to create a dial plan for it. And then I pick my agent. I could have multiple agents. I'm just keeping it simple. Okay, the timeout action here, you could say goes to voice. If nobody answers it, send it over to voicemail, or you could route it to somewhere else. Okay, then I'll hit that restart. And then if I go to active call center, so there's my agent, but my agent's logged out. I could log in various ways by dialing *22 to log out, in and out. I'm going to just go to the administrator point and log it in that way. Hit save. All right, now let me find the one that's in there. Okay, that's the other phone. All right, so going back to it. And I'm going to dial, I think I did 203. Okay, so right now, I'm sitting in the queue on my extension 102 down here, waiting to, and it shows that it's trying, and it's offering it to extension 101. I'm going to go ahead and answer it. Mute real quick. There we go. All right, so now this particular agent has now answered the call from 102. And if I was on another phone as an administrator or an admin, and I have the thing set up appropriately, I could push that button and it would ring, and then I'd be able to listen in on the call. You can also do a dial plan feature code to do that as well. Okay, so if I hang up.
Quick question for this in general, I guess. What is kind of capacity one could expect from, like, run-of-the-mill systems that?
That's a good question. All right, so I'll stop presenting and go back to my video. Well, where is that? Here is a Raspberry Pi 3. This Raspberry Pi 3 can do more than 100 concurrent calls. That's assuming we're not recording the calls. We're not transcoding the calls, doing anything wild. And when I say 100, we could probably easily do that. Probably more than that. So this is just a quad core 1.2 gigahertz or 1.1 or something. I don't know, not super powerful. The Raspberry Pi 4 is quite a bit more powerful. And servers, if you go to any server, you can do thousands of calls. You can do, we have customers that are many thousands of calls. Some of the biggest ones have 30,000 phones in a cluster because they're just 30,000. You're not going to put 30,000 people in one building, probably. Okay, it's possible. It's possible, but in a lot of cases, that might be a couple separate buildings, and you would want redundancy, but you would split it across multiple servers a bit, but they would all be replicating the database and sharing it, and then they can have thousands of calls. A single good server, I mean, it depends. The numbers, when I say any kind of numbers like this, it could vary wildly.
Yeah.
It could vary. How good are you at setting up the database? Did you put the database server on a different server, or did you leave it on the same server? Did you configure the database with something more than just the defaults? So it can vary quite a bit. But even just in Intel Atom, an Intel Atom, a typical one, could probably handle a couple hundred calls. A server could easily handle, I mean, thousands of calls.
Yeah.
The thing
Yeah,
that
it's about the same impression I got. I did I think last year I did a little bit of testing, just start the proxy forwarding on Atom. I got to probably 500 calls or something per course.
nice. Yeah, so it just depends on what you do with those calls too. What kind of activity? Are they going through a conference center and every one of them's being mixed together? Are they running video? Are they doing huge amounts of BLF and you have a sidecar that's this long? There are a few that they do stack and become that long. It's amazing. Anyway, so it could depend upon that. Anyway, we have lots of people that have hundreds of domains, and I'm sure there are some with thousands of domains. Anyway, some of our biggest install, 30,000. Well, it's open source, not that everybody reports back what they're doing.
Yeah.
The biggest ones are going to generally be quiet about what they're doing. So, yeah, we don't have some, but we do know for sure that we do have some very large systems out there that are running it, and it's a lot to do with FreeSwitch. FreeSwitch does pretty well on scaling. On SIP, SIP is not its strongest point. What I mean by that, registrations, BLF is not its. You can split up the work a bit better. You can put a proxy in front of it and make it go way higher. But like I said, it depends on the skill level of the people setting it up and just how much you can scale it. To be honest, if you have somebody that's really skilled, you can go to very large and any size that you really want to go. If it just depends on skill level on the
just a quick note on this.
There are also some Easter eggs, some things that I don't know why, but are not so known. That, for example, the deployment that Mark was talking about is important because Sophia's the SIP part of FreeSwitch has one only thread that takes care of registration. So while it's registering one phone, cannot do another thing. So if it goes and do a deep to the database, it's just stuck waiting for database before registering the second. So, for example, if you got a blackout and then you're back online and you have 1,000 phones registering at the same moment, you die. So one way to go around this is, for example, there is a setting in the SIP module, Sophia, that you can have one thread for each registration. So the registration will go in parallel, and we use CPU, but it will go in parallel, and that can save your day. But I don't know why, but first is not known, and second is not to default. So
Yeah, well, I would say that from my experience implementing like multi-threading applications, you probably don't want single thread for each request. That's a little bit overkill. Not only it wastes CPU cycles switching threads, but also it does not allow you to properly utilize CPU caches. So the best performance out of modern CPUs you only get when you do repeating work. So you basically you need to batch up your work into like queues and give it to CPU so it can basically do the same thing over and over again. Then you're basically not only using like traditional caches, but also make good use of branch predictor and all those very important features code to run quickly. Anyway, that's just
Well,
you know.
I would like to clarify one thing with what Giovanni said. Free switch on a call, each call is in its own thread. The registrations, the BLF are one thread per SIP profile. You can deal with it by adding multiple SIP profiles. You can deal with it like Giovanni said with that setting that he mentioned. So there's various ways of approaching it. But as far as the phone calls, each phone call is actually its own thread. So the calls themselves scale really well. The registrations to BLF, that is per SIP profile by default per SIP profile, unless you have some extra settings.
and
Yeah.
Change the behavior.
there is another aspect that I mean you kind of not wanna know, and there's a presence and BLF, and that is doing some very bizarre things on the database, like each 30 seconds.
Yeah. Anyway, another kind of observation or maybe suggestion or maybe something to think for you guys to think about is that while we developed our platform for several years, then we decided we only kind of license it and give it for people to use. But also at some point we decided to run it and offer as a service. So it might be something you guys should also kind of think about. So if somebody wants to use Fusion but does not have necessarily technical abilities to set it up self, if you can give them an option to pay like I don't know $100 and have it pre-set up and ready to go, it also be something to support, and also gives kind of better experience because you're a creator of this product, right? So you're the best one to operate it actually, and you also learn a lot while operating it. Sorry, Giovanni, I'm muted. I think you're trying to say something.
Yeah, no, I just made my mind, and it's almost it's very, very, very late.
Oh
And
yeah.
we lost track, and we keep talking. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, very, very late here, and I'm sure for Denis too, because he's in my same time zone. And first of all, we will need to eat sooner or later, or I will faint. But
I
but
don't
also,
want
I mean,
that.
there is no time for our second argument. I mean, second issue that was about the future of SIP. That I mean, it was so interesting, but now is like 2 hours or more maybe. So
yeah, I guess.
maybe we can do another installment for speaking about the
Absolutely,
future of SIP,
absolutely,
because
absolutely.
I mean it would be so a pity to do it in 10 minutes.
Yeah. I agree. I
Yes,
agree
and
with that.
I would also, and maybe just on the last point of Mark, Giovanni, I absolutely agree with you, and I'm also starving a little bit.
We've seen your kids getting very,
Yeah, and
very hungry too.
absolutely, providing something as a service is the way to go nowadays, because people tend to cut on the personnel. So as you said, skilled personnel is just you cannot afford to have someone full time doing PBX or something in the companies. So lots of companies outsourcing things into the cloud services, and also as you saw the free switch themselves, they've done an operator to provide a service. So definitely think about it, and definitely Max could help you because he's has connections with operators, and we are also operator in Europe. So if you would need any advice, support, or something, we could help you there as well. So definitely
thank
think
you.
about it. Yeah.
All right. I appreciate the advice. Thank you.
Yeah, and just very impressive set of features, and whole product is seems very interesting and well designed, I guess. So I guess that's what we'll do. We'll do another episode sometime later and talk about future on SIP. Just a question: what is the plan for the trade shows and sorry, not trade shows, conferences? All that. Where are you going, Mark, this year?
This was the year I was going to start going to trade shows.
Yeah.
Not this year. I'm
Not
afraid.
this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still, by the way, they're still doing virtual ones. The one we're going to is ITW. They're going to do virtuals in I think next month or something, and it
Is
doesn't
it?
cost a lot of. It's probably like a few $100.
Yeah, we got to do virtual for now. But
What about conference? So you're probably going to speak at the ClueCon, right?
maybe I didn't because of I didn't sign up for it because of they dropped the in person, but I'll check and see if I can speak for the next one.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I was
Oh,
planning on going until until the virus happened, and that kind of messed that one up. But
what about you, Giovanni? Are you speaking on the ClueCon Deconstructed? How they call it?
Yeah, actually, they asked me, and I have I haven't really to fill the form and do the things. I've not yet filled, but yeah.
Okay,
That-
I'll look for that.
yeah. Uh, yeah. This was the year I was going to go to some BSD conferences too, and I wanted to do. I also wanted to go to Postgres conference also. So now I guess it'll be the year I do online.
Yeah. Well, BSD conference is actually going right now. I think it's yesterday and today, so it should be online right now. I don't know about Postgres.
Yeah. Well, thanks for inviting me on here, Giovanni.
Oh, my pleasure.
And it is nice meeting each one of you as well.
Oh yeah, thanks Mark for coming out. It's
Yeah.
definitely nice to know each other, and I'm looking forward to talk to you later, and Giovanni as well, and Denis.
Yes, nice to meet you, Denis, as well.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Giovanni. Nice to meet you, Mark.
All right, well, we'll wrap up then, and everyone have a good day, and thank you for watching this, whoever that might be,
Yeah,
now
Max.
or later.
maybe I wanted to thank you as well for providing this platform and bringing people together. And maybe this is something there is nothing good about virus, obviously, but maybe a little thing that could be positive is that because of the virus, you started this platform and it's bringing people together that otherwise would only meet face to face, which is good, obviously, but this provides a broader access to the broader auditorium for the people outside to look at this and to get the knowledge as well. So thank you for doing this.
Oh yeah, thank you, Denis.
Thank you. Yeah.
For that. Well, I always say it's all about latency, right? You go to those conferences and that's where you cut your latency. You can speak to the people right there and then change ideas and hear feedback, because otherwise, like, let's say write Mark email today, maybe he will read it tomorrow, maybe 3 days after, and then he finds time, reply, maybe think about first and reply, and get reply a week later. I mean,
and then you forget.
Yeah, and I'm already
it's
moved
that.
to something different, so I need to kind of load everything up again and switch context and all that. So in a way, we hope to kind of have this interaction more real time discussions. Anyway, thank you guys for spending your time, and it was definitely very interesting presentation and very interesting discussion around it. So
Absolutely. Thank you so
Yes,
much,
definitely.
and
Thank you.
see you next time.
yeah, talk to you soon.
See you.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.